Welcome to another episode of Great Sci-Fi Books Explained, where we dive into the fascinating worlds crafted by some of the best minds in science fiction. Alastair Reynolds' Revelation Space isn't just another space opera. It's a dark, sprawling vision of a future where ancient alien ruins hide terrible secrets, humanity is fractured into post-human factions, and lurking in the shadows are forces older and far more powerful than us. In this video, we're diving into why Revelation Space has become one of the great modern sci-fi epics, from its Gothic starships and obsessive characters to its mind-bending cosmic revelations. And just so you know, this video will contain mega spoilers. So, let's uncover the dark truths of the universe in Revelation Space. Gravity ruled, and gravity did not take into account circumstances, or the unfairness of things, or listen to 11th hour petitions before reluctantly repealing its laws. Gravity crushed, and near the surface of a neutron star, gravity crushed absolutely, until diamond flowed like water, until a mountain collapsed into a millionth of its height. Revelation Space is set in the 26th century, where humanity is fractured into rival cultures. The Ultras, who live aboard vast lighthugger starships, the Conjoiners, humans linked by neural implants into a collective intelligence, and the Demarchists, democratic city-states run by direct democracy through implants. Across this backdrop of shifting alliances and decaying technology, we follow three main storylines that slowly converge. We begin with Dan Sylvest, an archaeologist on the planet Resurgam. Sylvest is brilliant but dangerously arrogant, obsessed with the mystery of the Amarantin, a bird-like alien race that flourished on Resurgam before abruptly going extinct around the time they developed spaceflight. Sylvest believes their extinction was not natural, but the people of Resurgam, led by political strongman Folkender, resent his dominance and elitism. When he ignores warnings, Sylvest is overthrown and imprisoned. Later, with the help of allies, he's restored to a position of influence, but his obsession with the Amarantin only deepens, driving him to uncover truths others would rather leave buried. Meanwhile, aboard the colossal starship Nostalgia for Infinity, we meet Ilya Volyova, one of the ship's gunnery officers. The ship's captain, John Brannigan, is slowly being consumed by a terrifying plague, a nanotechnology disease that is grotesquely reshaping his body into a fusion of flesh and machine. Volyova and the other officers believe Sylvest's expertise in exotic technologies might be the only chance of curing him. She sets out to find him, recruiting crew and weapons along the way. Among those recruited is Anna Cowrie, a former officer who became an assassin. She is approached by a mysterious entity known as the Mademoiselle, who manipulates her into joining the Nostalgia for Infinity's crew. The Mademoiselle's instructions are simple. When Cowrie reaches Sylvest, she must kill him. Only later is it revealed that the Mademoiselle is not simply a human conspirator, but the fragmented remnant of Corinne Refevre, a researcher altered by contact with the Shrouds, vast alien zones of space inhabited by inscrutable machine intelligence is called the Shrouders. Corinne emerged carrying a kind of alien imprint, part human, part Shrouder code, which has warped into the manipulative personality known as the Mademoiselle. Her motives, like the Shrouders themselves, remain obscure, but she believes Sylvest carries a dangerous infection of his own. As the Nostalgia for Infinity reaches Resurgam, the storylines begin to converge. Sylvest agrees to help Brannigan, but his deeper motive is to continue his pursuit of the Amarantin mystery. He believes that the answer lies in Cerberus, a massive alien construct which orbits the dark world of Hades. Investigations at Cerberus reveal a chilling truth. The structure is not a tomb or monument, but a warning beacon, part of a galaxy-spanning system left behind by the Inhibitors. These are ancient machine-like intelligences whose sole purpose is to monitor the galaxy for rising civilizations. When a species becomes advanced enough to threaten galactic order, the Inhibitors act by wiping them out. This is what happened to the Amarantin, and Sylvest realizes humanity is now on the brink of triggering the same response. But there's another layer. We learn that Sylvest himself carries a second alien imprint, a Shrouder construct called Sunstealer. implanted in him years earlier during an earlier expedition. Where the Mademoiselle seeks to prevent the inhibitor's awakening, Sunstealer pushes the opposite direction, steering Sylvester toward decisions that will call them down on humanity. Sylvester is not just obsessed, he is compromised, caught between alien software battling for control of his mind. It eventually becomes apparent that Dan was a biological clone of his father, an immortality contingency plan designed by Calvin Sylvester. The ultimate aim was to override his son's consciousness by overlaying it with Calvin's beta-level simulation, a sophisticated program that perfectly mimicked his personality, mannerisms, and thought patterns. The revelations spark chaos aboard Nostalgia for Infinity. The Mademoiselle's manipulation of Cowrie are exposed, Sunstealer's influences become undeniable, and Volyova begins to fear that bringing Sylvester aboard may have doomed them all. Sylvester ventures into Cerberus. There he discovers that Cerberus is not merely a beacon, but a gateway into Hades itself, an artificial planet hiding a vast alien megastructure, a kind of super space computer known as the Hades Matrix. Inside, Sylvester touches a device that draws his consciousness into this machine realm. When he emerges, Sunstealer seizes control of his suit and begins conducting inhibitor tests, calling the inhibitors down. In desperation, Sylvester uses nanodust to trigger the antimatter bombs hidden in his prosthetic eyes, destroying himself and Cerberus in the process. Yet even in death, he does not vanish entirely. A digital copy of his mind remains inside the Hades Matrix, trapped in an alien system. The novel closes not with resolution, but with a sense of looming dread. The inhibitors are aware of humanity, and the crew of the Nostalgia for Infinity are left to face the consequences of a truth too big to control. It's less an ending and more an opening movement of a much larger saga, one where Reynolds explores what happens when intelligence itself becomes a cosmic liability. And that's where the themes of Revelation Space crystallize. It was better to live, better to carry a memory of a memory, than suffer the vast burden of knowing. He was not meant to think like a god. At its heart, the novel is about obsession. Sylvester's drive to uncover the fate of the Amarantin blinds him to politics, love, and even his own survival. It's about control and coercion as characters are steered by hidden forces, whether it's Calvin's ghost, the Mademoiselle's manipulations, or Sunstealer's parasitic influence. It's about the erosion of identity. In a world where minds can be uploaded, overwritten, or infected by alien code until the question of what is truly you becomes unstable. Reynolds also paints a universe defined by decay and entropy. Progress comes not with triumph, but with corrosion. Against this backdrop, the great revelation of the inhibitors reinforces another theme: cosmic indifference. The universe doesn't nurture intelligence, it prunes it back. Taken together, these themes make Revelation Space more than just a hard sci-fi novel. It's a sci-fi Gothic meditation on knowledge, survival, and the terrifying fragility of being human in a universe that may not want us to endure. My new book, Tao Solandis, is now available. Links in the description because, well, of course it is. It's set at the end of time where an ancient AI guards the final stories of the universe. These are 6 interconnected tales of sci-fi with heart, brains, and just a sprinkle of existential dread. So if that sounds like your thing, grab a copy now before the heat death of the universe kills us all. To understand Revelation Space, it helps to understand its author, Alastair Reynolds. Reynolds was born in 1966 in Barry, Wales. Unlike many science fiction writers, he didn't come to the field from literature, but from science itself. He studied physics and astronomy at university before moving into astrophysics, eventually earning a PhD from the University of St Andrews. For over a decade, Reynolds worked for the European Space Agency in the Netherlands, where his research included black holes, stellar phenomena, and the physics of extreme environments. That background is crucial because it shaped his fiction. Reynolds belongs to a tradition of hard science fiction, writing where the physics is rigorous as the storytelling. When you read Revelation Space, the decaying lighthuggers, the alien ruins, and even the grotesque diseases feel convincing because they're grounded in real astrophysics and biology. He once said that working at ESA gave him the sense that the universe wasn't just strange, it was stranger than we can imagine. In terms of literary influences, Reynolds has often pointed to the new wave of British science fiction, authors like J.G. Ballard, whose obsession with decay and ruins echo through Revelation Space. You can see Ballard's fingerprints in the novel's ruined landscapes, Gothic imagery, and obsession with entropy. There's also the influence of Arthur C. Clarke, especially Clarke's cosmic scope and fascination with alien artifacts, but where Clarke's work often feels clean and awe-inspiring, Reynolds twists it into something darker, more unsettling. Reynolds was also influenced by space opera classics, writers like Larry Niven and Paul Anderson, but he deliberately wanted to strip away the shiny optimism of Golden Age sci-fi. The future of Revelation Space is not sleek and utopian, it's baroque, messy, filled with unreliable technology and fragile human ambitions. There was nothing in the universe that moved faster, but as she now saw, it was glacial compared to the speed that would be needed to keep their love alive. An important detail, when Reynolds wrote Revelation Space, he was still working full-time at ESA. He wrote the book in the evenings after days spent on astrophysics research. That scientific discipline shows through. The novel feels like it could only have been written by someone who genuinely understood the cosmos at a technical level. When it was published in 2000, it stood out. The sci-fi of the time was often dominated by cyberpunk neon grit or more accessible space adventures. Reynolds offered something different. A Gothic epic that blended hard science with atmosphere, mystery, and a sense of cosmic dread. Revelation Space wasn't just his debut novel, it was the start of an entire universe of stories, sequels, and spin-offs that many readers now call the Revelation Space universe. What really sets Revelation Space apart is its sheer density of sci-fi concepts. Alastair Reynolds takes the tools of astrophysics, mixes them with Gothic imagination, and builds a future that feels as terrifying as it does believable. At the heart of the book is the revelation that the galaxy isn't empty, it's being kept empty. The inhibitors are ancient, machine-like intelligences whose purpose is to detect and destroy civilizations once they become advanced enough to threaten galactic order. They wiped out the Amarantin, and Sylvestre's discoveries suggest humanity may be next. It's Reynolds' hard sci-fi answer to the Fermi paradox. Intelligent life doesn't survive long enough to spread. But their motives aren't simple malice. The inhibitors' ultimate goal is to ensure the galaxy's survival when it collides with Andromeda billions of years from now. By pruning away disruptive species, they believe they are stabilizing the galactic ecosystem, engineering conditions to endure the cosmic upheaval of that future merge. The nostalgia for infinity is one of Reynolds' most memorable creations. These city-sized spacecraft travel at relativistic speeds, but because there's no faster-than-light travel, journeys can take centuries. The crews, the Ultras, live almost permanently aboard, modifying their bodies for the rigors of deep space. The lighthuggers feel less like sleek starships and more like crumbling Gothic cathedrals, carrying the weight of history with them. One of the book's most terrifying inventions is the melding plague, the nanotechnological virus that infects both machinery and biology, fusing them together in grotesque ways. The captain of Nostalgia for Infinity, John Brannigan, is slowly being transformed into something inhuman, his body merging with the ship itself. It's classic Reynolds motif, technology as both miracle and nightmare. Then there are the pattern jugglers, and although they feature more prominently in later novels, the pattern jugglers appear here too. They're vast ocean-dwelling alien intelligences, more like planetary neural nets than single organisms. Humans who immerse themselves in their seas often experience visions, altered identities, and shared memories. They represent a completely different model of intelligence, one that questions where the boundaries of the self begin and end. Then there are the Shrouds and the Shrouders. The Shrouds are immense mysterious zones of space warped in impenetrable fields. Within them dwell the Shrouders, cryptic machine or post-machine intelligences who offer information, but always at a price. To enter the Shroud is to risk madness, death, or worse. Contact with them often results in fragments of alien code or unconsciousness being implanted into human minds, corrupting and reshaping identities. The Mademoiselle herself is revealed to be a human who returned from the Shroud carrying such an imprint, transformed into a manipulative hybrid of a person and alien software. The Shrouds embody Reynolds' fascination with unknowable intelligence, alien not because it's far away, but because it rewrites humans who touch it. When we look at the factions of humanity, Reynolds builds a fractured human future defined by technology. We have the Ultras, the ship-bound starfarers heavily modified to endure centuries in space. We have the Conjoiners, who use implants to share thoughts and function as a near hive mind. They embody a kind of post-human collective evolution. Then there are the Demarchists, citizens of a direct democracy where implants allow constant voting on governance. These factions aren't just set dressing, they embody different visions of how humans might adapt to the challenges of interstellar life. Reynolds also explores consciousness as data. The most striking example is Calvin Sylvester, Dan Sylvester's father, whose digital copy survives inside Dan's implants long after death. The tension between biological human and digital persistence raises deep questions about identity, control, and legacy. Threaded through all of this is Reynolds' background in astrophysics. He grounds the story in relativistic travel, time dilation, nanotech, and black hole physics. The speculative ideas feel terrifyingly plausible because they grow out of real science. Put together, these concepts create a universe where progress is fragile, technology is dangerous, and survival itself is uncertain. It's a future that feels lived in, haunted, and utterly convincing. The Mademoiselle is one of the most enigmatic figures in Revelation Space. She never appears directly in the flesh, instead she operates through intermediaries, holographic projections and whispered threats. To Anna Cowrie, she's both patron and jailer, a figure who dangles the possibility of reunion with her lost husband while coercing her into an assassination mission. Her origins are murky. It's suggested she might be an upload, a fragment of a once living person surviving as data, or even something stranger, a manipulative construct born from post-human technology. The ambiguity is deliberate. Reynolds makes her feel less like a person and more like a phantom of control, an avatar of hidden power structures that linger within the cracks of this universe. What makes the Mademoiselle especially unsettling is her detachment. She doesn't rage or threaten in melodramatic fashion, she calmly manipulates using guilt, promises, and half-truths. Her presence in the story highlights one of Reynolds' recurring ideas, that in a fractured human future, power often comes from the shadows. Far from a generic puppet master, the Mademoiselle is ultimately revealed to be Kathreen Lefevre, a former researcher from the Sylvester Institute who survived an expedition to Lascelles' Shroud, but not unchanged. An alien shrouder, emissary or program imprinted onto her mind inside the shroud, and the composite that returned to Chasm City became a clandestine power operating under the name the Mademoiselle. Her long game: stop any attempt to awaken the inhibitors, specifically by opposing Sunstealer, a rival shrouder construct seeded into Dan Sylvester and later the Nostalgia for Infinity to push events toward triggering the beacon. She coerces Anna Cowrie by implanting a beta-level copy of herself in Cowrie's head and weaponizes Cowrie's grief over her missing husband to ensure access to Sylvester, ultimately instructing her to assassinate him if necessary. When subtlety fails, her ruthlessness shows. She's willing to risk obliterating Resurgam to prevent a civilization from inadvertently calling the inhibitors. In the struggle aboard the Lighthugger against Sunstealer's influence, the Mademoiselle's beta copy is destroyed, but her manipulations shape every decision that leads to the novel's revelation. Side note, later books further clarify Kathreen's fate and the Shrouder factions behind both her and Sunstealer. Where the Mademoiselle is manipulative and shadowy, Sunstealer is something even more alien, a Shrouder construct imprinted directly into Dan Sylvester during an earlier expedition into the Shrouds. Unlike the fragmented human-alien hybrid that Kathreen Lefevre became, Sunstealer is almost entirely non-human in origin, an alien program parasitic in nature, riding inside Sylvester's mind and subtly steering his actions. Its motives stand in stark opposition to the Mademoiselle's, where she seeks to To prevent humanity from awaking the inhibitors, Sunstealer actively pushes Sylvester toward triggering the beacon at Cerberus. It represents the Shrouders' dangerous ambiguity, alien entities whose goals are not aligned with humanity's survival and whose interventions feel less like dialogue than infection. Sunstealer is never a character in the traditional sense. It doesn't have conversations, personalities, or visible presence. Instead, it works like a malign influence, a whisper in Sylvester's consciousness that fuels his obsessive drive and clouds his judgment. Its existence deepens one of the novel's central themes, that human beings are not in full control of themselves. Just as Calvin Sylvester's ghost hijacks his son's body and the Mademoiselle manipulates Cowrie from the outside, Sunstealer corrupts from within. Together, the Mademoiselle and Sunstealer embody the novel's deepest anxieties. They are rival emissaries of the Shrouds, locked in a proxy war inside human minds. One seeks survival through suppression, the other hastens annihilation, but neither acts with humanity's interests at heart. When Revelation Space was first published in 2000, it immediately stood out. Critics praised its ambition, its sheer density of ideas, the hard science foundations, and its bold refusal to offer tidy resolutions. Some noted its prose could be heavy and its characters difficult to love, but even those criticisms became part of its reputation. This was science fiction that wasn't meant to be comfortable, it was meant to be overwhelming. The novel was shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Award and quickly established Reynolds as one of the major new voices in British science fiction. Readers drawn to its mix of astrophysical realism and Gothic atmosphere helped it grow into a cult favourite, the seed of an entire shared universe that would expand into sequels like Redemption Arc and Absolution Gap, as well as companion novels and short stories. Revelation Space has influenced the science fiction that came after it. At a time when space opera risked feeling outdated, Reynolds revitalised it, showing that you could combine the sense of wonder of interstellar adventure with the gritty plausibility of hard science. Writers like Peter F. Hamilton, Alastair Reynolds himself in later works, and even newer voices like Adrian Tchaikovsky built on that blending of Gothic atmosphere and scientific realism. The idea of technology as both miraculous and grotesque echoed across modern sci-fi. In the long term, Revelation Space has become a touchstone of the genre. It set the tone for early 21st century space opera, vast in scope, rigorous in detail, and unafraid to confront cosmic dread. It redefined what big idea science fiction could feel like, not through optimism but through relentless focus on fragility of civilizations, of identities, of survival itself, and its impact lingers. The novel reminds us that progress is fragile, identity is unstable, and survival is never guaranteed. In Reynolds' cosmos, humanity's greatest triumph carry the seeds of its destruction, and the most terrifying discoveries are the ones that tell us we were never truly in control. More than 20 years after its publication, Revelation Space remains one of the great achievements of modern sci-fi, not just for its scale and imagination, but for the way it dares to whisper a darker truth, that the universe doesn't owe us a future.